So, folks, we got to talk about the war in Iran. And as of earlier today, about 12 hours ago, as of the recording of this, Donald Trump has officially said he does not want to do a ceasefire and is not interested in one at all, which is pretty interesting considering there hasn't been really a talk from any circle about any kind of ceasefire. So this coming out just kind of apropos of nothing. Iran is not approaching the United States for a ceasefire. But apropos of nothing, the president of the United States said to a group of reporters, I don't want to do a ceasefire. You know, you don't do a ceasefire when you're literally obliterating the other side. So, no ceasefire anytime soon, I guess. However, despite the fact that we are obliterating their defenses, according to Donald Trump, the Pentagon is trying to get $200 billion for further funding the war effort, with Pete Hegseth saying, obviously it takes money to kill bad guys. And it's, 200 billion could give us could end world hunger. 200 billion dollars could obliterate homelessness in America, could make college free in America, could ensure no one ever goes hungry again in America. And like these people are just like, yeah, just pull it out of your ass, right? And of course, by pull it out of their ass, a lot of Republicans are like rubbing their hands together and thinking about how great it will be to have an excuse to like defund Medicare, or kick more people off of Medicaid. It's truly demonic, really. Just truly demonic. They view it as a new excuse to loot the American public. It is worth saying that at least there is some pretty strong opposition among Democrats to granting this kind of funding. Adam Smith said this earlier today. It's going to be very tough to get through it. I think all Democrats should oppose it. I mean, I'll oppose it for no other reason than I oppose this war and I want this war to stop. But look, you want to know something really funny? You know what Congress tried to pass yesterday in the House? A balanced budget amendment. The Republican House put that out. I mean, I'm not often speechless, but I'm close to speechless trying to explain that. So there will be some Republicans who will say, gosh, we can't do this. It's too expensive and all of that. But you know the pattern. They say it, then at the end of the day, they do whatever Trump asks them to. So how many Republicans will actually oppose it? I don't know. Maybe there might there be a couple Democrats who support it. One of the arguments is, well, even if you don't support the war, we've gone to war, we've done it. Don't we have to pay for it? Forgive me, but fuck that. Okay, if you want to pay for it, I'm going to raise taxes. You want to raise taxes? I can have that conversation. The idea that we're going to dig into the rest of the budget, we're cutting Medicaid, food stamps, we're cutting all these programs, and then we're going to pull $200 billion aside on top of the $1.5 trillion defense budget? Hell no. No Democrat should vote for this. And I hope the Republicans who care about fiscal responsibility will stand up and say no, but it's a tough call. And then you get into the whole 60 votes in the Senate. Did they get rid of the filibuster? I think it's going to be really difficult to pull through this amount of money. And it's just like, man, this is at least some strong language used to deploy against, the Chuck Schumers in Congress who are sitting there being like, well, the Baileys, they told me they have always wanted a war in Iran. The Baileys' number one issue, they came to me the other day and they said, oh, you better invade Iran. I better be turning on my TV in a few weeks and seeing stories about boots on the ground in Iran. That's the number one thing we, the Baileys, the embodiment of all your voters, want more than anything in the world. We crave the death of Iranian citizens via boots on the ground. And like that's like just what happens to Chuck Schumer on the regular, you know? So at the very least, folks like Adam Smith are clearing the incredibly low bar of opposing Democratic leadership right now. But we need a lot more than just one guy willing to talk bluntly about the current state of play in the Democratic Party. Like, we need all the Democratic Party to be standing up and like trying to strip Schumer of his authority. Like, it's nuts. Now, despite Donald Trump saying, well, we don't need a ceasefire, we're obliterating the other side, well, also Trump stated that we need a lot of help in the Strait of Hormuz, and specifically called for China and Japan to help. It would be nice if countries such as China and Japan got involved. And then he also followed that up by saying, we don't use the Strait of Hormuz like countries in Europe and Asia do. You know, we're doing this for you. You don't understand. We Americans, we attacked Iran and are trying to get them to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. We don't need it. We're doing it for you guys. We just love Europe and China so much. We're doing it for you guys. Lol, they don't want to join. Yeah, like, there was also a story yesterday of like a bunch of countries like doing a like shifting back and saying, I guess we'll help, but not really saying exactly how they're gonna assist or help. And similarly, there were more stories like that today, and I kind of think none of these countries are going to help. They're just trying to figure out how best to placate this gigantic man-child who is running the United States at the moment, you know? Like, that's the impression that I get at the moment. And not only that, things are going to get a lot worse when it comes to energy, folks. Because here's just a very short clip of Scott Bessent.
Just laser focused on it. As I said, there was a bombing campaign last week. The military assets on Carg Island were destroyed. And the other thing I can tell you, if you're an oil worker, you don't want to work there. So all the oil workers there are being coerced to stay there. And, we will see what happens with whether that eventually becomes a U.S. asset.
What would be your...
This guy just like smugly leaning back and be like, yeah, maybe Carg Island will just someday be a U.S. asset. Guys, they're gonna put boots on the ground. They're gonna put boots on the ground. They've deployed so many soldiers to the area. Just earlier today, it was reported the U.S. military is deploying thousands of additional soldiers to the Middle East. 3 U.S. officials told Reuters earlier today. One of the officials, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said the USS Boxer, along with the Marine Expeditionary Unit, are departing from the United States' West Coast 3 weeks ahead of schedule. So, yeah, they're gonna try to send in like around 10,000 troops into Iran. And maybe those troops are going to be trying to clear like the ground-based assets that are within striking distance of the Strait of Hormuz. But like, genuinely, this is a terrible idea. The other alternative is that they are going to be sent to Carg Island. Some of this is based on the speculation being put forward by the Trump administration and their officials. Based on that, apparently the US military is estimating it is going to take about a month of fighting to clear the potential threats to the Strait of Hormuz, to restore confidence that the oil tankers will make it through without being exploded. And the issue here is that you cannot clear the Strait of Hormuz assets like that. You can't do it. The military assets that are in place there are numerous, and Iran has all kinds of technology that allows them to project force into the Strait of Hormuz. They are aware that it is like the number one thing they have to deploy to be able to do. When we're talking about this, that raises the idea here that the United States is going to be fighting a prolonged quagmire in order to try and open up the Strait of Hormuz, which is the number one goal. But also, Karg Island is really close to Iran. So it kind of seems like right now they're dispatching units to Iran. It's going to take those boats, weeks to get into position on the other side of the globe. And when they arrive there, the hope from military leadership is that the Strait of Hormuz will already be open, and then they can just sail through and land on Karg Island, occupy it, and that will bring Iran to its knees. But a far more likely scenario is, and we know that already there's been close ground support deployed in order to try and weaken military placements near the Strait of Hormuz, right? Like attack helicopters, slow flying support aircraft, etc., have been going on attack runs. I have to imagine that it is not going to be done. It might not even be done in a year. I think that Donald Trump is in a position of desperation, and he is going to try and deploy those 10,000 Marines into Iran directly in order to assist with clearing the Strait of Hormuz military encampments. This is going to go terribly for our guys. They're going to get massacred. And that's before they even get sent to Karg Island. Because at Karg Island, guys, let me just pull up the map here, okay? Just so you know where it is. As you can see here, this is the Strait of Hormuz. And then way up here is Karg Island. Now, you will note about Karg Island that it is extremely close to Iran. It is very fucking close to Iran. It's positioned basically the worst place you would ever want to deploy Marines, because I guarantee you, they're in this mountainous region right here. They have like missile launchers. They got all kinds of shit aimed directly at Karg Island, because Iran is going to be damned before they let U.S. military take over the island, right? Without a fight. And so, how are they supposed to get there? Well, they can only get there if they're being deployed, via sea by going through the Strait of Hormuz. Another option available to them, of course, is perhaps airdropping in, but all of that seems very, very risky. So it kind of seems to me like they're going to try to clear out the Strait of Hormuz area. But I want to remind folks, even if you clear out the immediate vicinity, which would take an immense amount of work, there's still an awful lot of territory that can target the Strait of Hormuz. This is all obviously terrible and is going to get even more of a shit show, right? And I think it is all well and good for us to notice that currently everything that is happening is getting us closer and closer into a worst case scenario. Like a worst case scenario here is the United States doesn't back down and we do a full-on invasion of Iran and get stuck into a cycle where, like, Donald Trump's ego will not allow him to pull troops back, and suddenly people are just dying for literally no reason over there. I mean, people already are dying for no reason over there. And not only that, it's going to spike gas prices even further. And it's worth pointing out, all of this strategy seems to be predicated on the idea that Donald Trump has that if he can just get American troops onto Karg Island, Iran will surrender because 90% of Iran's oil ships out of Karg Island, right? And the issue here is that it seems like Donald Trump is operating under the assumption that if boots are on the ground on Karg Island, America controls all of the oil, as opposed to the reality, which is that you can turn off the oil going to Karg Island if you are in Iran. And Iran has other ways of exporting oil. So Karg Island is a very important logistical point, but it's not the only point. And it doesn't have to be the area responsible for 90% of exports. However, if the incredibly expensive civilian complex there does get exploded, and again, different members of Congress have been talking about this over the last 24 hours, but if that facility gets destroyed, Iran has less and less to lose. And I know that it might be wild to think this, but Iran is still, to a degree, not fully escalated. You know, there are, like they could give a lot fewer fucks. And if their civilian infrastructure, extraordinarily expensive civilian infrastructure for around energy, gets destroyed, well, that lack of fucks is going to become a material problem for everybody in the region, and will likely also spill over into violence against different civilian targets. Iran is a cornered dog who's ready to go ham? Absolutely. Absolutely. Gas prices will affect the prices of products. It's true. And we should expect some kind of market shock because things are getting worse and worse. All right. This piece from Wired was really, really good. They interviewed a bunch of energy analysts. Here we go. This scenario is something that you give to the first year oil analysts to say, okay, if this happens, it's a really interesting illustrative educational thought experiment, said Rory Johnston, a Canadian oil market researcher. It's kind of like what would happen if gravity just suddenly stopped working for 10 minutes. The things you just give to students to say, let's put a thought experiment to something extreme and see how the system would react. I never thought we would actually see this. Ellen Wald, an energy and geopolitics consultant, agrees, quote, this is like one of those war game simulations in energy markets, she says. Anytime there is any kind of military activity in the Persian Gulf or even in the Middle East, oil markets tend to get very jittery, says Wald. Closing the straits was a sign that this war could have much more extreme impacts than other conflicts. But for the first few weeks, the oil production facilities themselves remained mostly untouched. No oil and no products were getting out, and some countries don't have enough storage, and so they were shutting down production simply because they couldn't store the oil. But that's the kind of thing that can be fairly quickly reversible. However, with the strikes now hitting these facilities, well, it's no longer as easily reversible, right? And I genuinely don't know how we get out of this. Johnston points out that the amount of oil and gas that could be taken off the table is roughly the same amount of demand that was shed during the initial global shutdown in 2020 from the pandemic. If the strait does not reopen, people are like, is this recessionary? I'm like, no, it's depressionary. This will be so bad, he says. We're talking about COVID-level demand loss, no cars on the road, no planes in the sky, but with no pandemic. So that's where we're at. Wald stresses that the U.S. is not in danger of losing oil and gas supply. However, Americans will soon feel the effects of war most directly at the pump. We're all going to be paying a huge economic price for this. The thing said here is like kind of a cold comfort, right? Like, oh, well, we're not in danger of running out of oil or gas and like having no gasoline out there to fuel our cars. The danger is economic. The danger is, stagflation. The danger is gas prices translating into higher product prices, translating into a whole knock-on series of effects, right? the danger here is skittish investors in the AI market finally realize that this technology they've invested hundreds of billions of dollars into hasn't produced anything that is turning them a profit and is in fact only going to get more expensive now that oil is on the rise, and causing them to cut their losses and leave, and collapsing the AI market. Like, if this all is compounded by the collapse of AI, like, we are looking at an incredibly devastating economic event, the likes of which no one in this country has ever seen, except maybe folks who are still alive who were born during the Great Depression. It's really scary. And again, it is likely that this is going to get worse. Just today, Iraq also declared force majeure on foreign operated oil fields, meaning that effectively Iraq is saying that they are reserving the right to cancel their oil contracts because of attacks on the region. I mean, like, it is so bad. What this means is of such consequence that Iraq is cutting their oil production by 70%. The entire country is cutting oil production by 70%. And this is going to have massive, massive effects on price. We haven't even begun to feel the full effects on price. And it's worth noting here that Iraq would not do this unless they felt it was absolutely necessary, because 90% of Iraq's budget comes from oil sales. We're talking like millions of barrels of oil just not being produced anymore, not going onto the market every day. So, like, all of this is not even touching on other things that are being disrupted, like fertilizers or different industrial chemicals that are necessary for productive purposes. We're just talking about crude. Like, that's all we're talking about right now. I gotta be honest, guys. I'm real worried about how this is gonna go. Buckle in, get yourself some rice and beans. Yeah, stay safe out there, folks. Stay safe out there. Real worried about how this is gonna go, especially with Trump at the helm this time. Yeah, buy some extra toilet paper if you can. Yeah, we're gonna die. We're not gonna die, but we are going to feel this. It's not gonna be like an easy time to live through, but we're not all gonna die. Oof, we might as well be dead. No, just it. What the hell, man? Like, buck up. We are gonna survive. We're gonna do our best. We got each other. We got to get organized, of course, so that we got each other even better. Is it okay to be scared? Of course it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be worried. Those are totally normal feelings. But to just throw up your hands in the air and say, well, we're all dead now. Like, no, we're not. Stop, like, we're not even in the fucking war zone, all right? The problem we are going to be contending with and living through is very different from the actual war zones that our current government is creating on the other side of the planet. All right. Anyway, folks, we got to get organized. That's what I'm trying to get at here. If you are feeling scared, if you are feeling worried, the best defense right now is getting your community organized and organizing alongside like-minded people. You can do that by joining and radicalizing your local Dems to make them more progressive. You can do that by joining your local DSA and making them more effective. And if you need help getting started doing that, join our Discord, reach out to GamerG for help with DSA, reach out to Dragonfly for help with your local Dems. If you don't want to join our Discord, you can join riverboat.gg and talk to them over here. They are often available during the streams. And also, folks, if you haven't yet, like the video, leave a comment longer than 8 words, apparently helps in the algorithm. Hit the subscribe button. And last but not least, check out ImogeneOlivia.com, gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up with trans femmes in mind. Also tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. It is sexy, well-made, non-tucking lingerie designed to fit you. Again, it's non-tucking and it is very sexy. I'm also very comfortable. I'm wearing it right now. It feels great. And all that being said, check it out. Link down in the doobly-doo, and we'll keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, dating, plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat.